Women of Reddit, what's your cringy? Nice guy's story. He wanted to impress upon me what a good guy he was, and he was also too scared to ask me out like a normal person. He killed two birds with one stone by having his split personality tell me it really wanted to kill me, but nice guy was bravely holding it back because he liked me so much. Obviously I fell head over heels immediately. I was friends with a co-worker. We had hung out a few times socially after work, and got along well, but it never really occurred to me to wonder if he was interested in me. At that point in my life, I did not get a lot of male attention, and honestly was pretty cringy myself, but that's for a different thread. Anyway, we were walking side by side and I guess he went to put his arm around me. It surprised me, like that someone is tapping you on the opposite shoulder trick, and I turned abruptly. He took it as incredibly rude, gave me an angry lecture about leading people on and how disgusting you make someone feel when you literally flinch from their touch, and called me a bitch. Sorry for my reflexes. About a week later another friend came to me at work to let me know that guy was telling everyone one was a whore who was sleeping my way through the department. Nice? The dumbest part was that I probably would have gone on a date with him if he'd asked. I just had no idea he was thinking along those lines. Bullet dodged. In high school a guy I barely knew tried to convince me to tell my parents that I was going to a friend's house, but really go hang out with him. I was normally rebellious, but got the feeling that my parents would be right in telling me I couldn't spend time with him. I politely rejected his offer and blamed my parents so it wouldn't be awkward, and he retaliated by covering my dad's car in dyed tampons. Patrick, you're a fucking creep. This all played out on social media. Never met the guy in person. He found me through some posts I made on someone else's discussion thread and tried to derail the conversation to how good I looked. A couple hours later, he messaged me. We go back and forth a little bit, him waxing poetic about how lovely I was and how he was looking to settle down and how every woman he'd been with, at least 50, had shit on him in some way. I tried to be polite and let him down easy since he wasn't what I was looking for at the time. He quickly got pissed off and ranted about how it wasn't fair, and how fucked up it was that I wouldn't at least give him a chance, until I lost patience and blocked him. And that's how I became number 51. I've seen two guys get into a fist fight at an office Christmas party over who was going to help an intoxicated 27-year-old married woman get home. I managed one of these guys and subsequently found out he had sent her 80 emails in one day with all that "why won't you talk to me, we're friends" etc. stuff. He was fired but couldn't see how he had done anything wrong. This actually just happened recently. My good friend from college and I, along with other friends from our program, went out to a bar to celebrate finishing our degree. He kept feeding me shots, but one figured everyone just wanted to be drunk and have a good time. The night is coming to an end and I am quite incapacitated. My good friend frantically approaches me saying that he had just seen a guy put something in my drink, which I had just finished. He told me that I would soon be unconscious, and it was best that he take me back to his apartment so he could take care of me. Being heavily drunk and also quite scared, I agreed and he helped me back to his apartment. After making me something to eat and giving me some water, we set up camp for the night on his couch. He put on a movie and he said he would sit and watch me sleep to make sure I didn't throw up or anything. As I started to doze off, he started touching me, first on my feet and knees and then my upper thigh. I confronted him about it and he said after everything he had done he felt he deserved compensation. I laughed it off, but after he tried to make a move again, I got angry and we began fighting. He exposed to me that no one had put anything in my drink and it was all a ploy to allow him to make his move. After some more arguing he decided it was best I left, and he kicked me out of his apartment at 3 a.m. while I was still considerably drunk. This is someone whom I've trusted and spent 4 years being friends with. Safe to say Illinois be a lot more speculative with future male friends. Right after high school, a guy came out of the woodworks and told me that he had a crush on me. I thought it was nice, but I just did not like him. He was always buying me presents and dropping them off at my mom's house. I always said thanks, but told him I just wasn't interested. We had the same group of friends, so I would see him from time to time. When I would see him, he would pull me aside and politely ask me to go on a date with him. I told him that I just didn't see him that way. One day, I ran into him at the store and he asked me out again, and I went on this long rant about how I was going off to college and I didn't want to be tied down. He ended up asking me out again. I ended up walking away. He came up behind me and pushed me. He has this evil look in his eye, and I ran to my car and called my mom. He ended up messaging me a couple days later and telling me that he's just mad because God told him I was the one he was going to marry. I blocked him on all social media and my phone. He still managed to get my new address when I moved off to college, and one time he drove almost an hour to my apartment. He knocked on my door and he handed me a bag of my favorite candy. I flipped out like I should have done many times before, and one threatened to call the cops and get a restraining order. I've seen him once in the last 7 years with his wife and new baby. I hope he has changed. So not a stereotypical nice guy really, but I met him at a party, gave him a ride home, and after belting out "Don't Stop Believing" together, he asked for my number. We went on one date and texted for a week. Then Saturday morning, I woke up to 50+ texts that started with asking what I was doing, sleeping because I worked in the morning, and went all the way up to "I should just kill myself since no one wants to talk to me." I told him that was unacceptable, as I had already told him I worked Saturday morning, but even if I hadn't, there's no reason to text me over 50 times. If I'm not answering, I'm not answering. He whined about being so nice, and how good he was to me and blah 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 blah. Thankfully, when my friends asked why I was ignoring such a nice guy, showing them the texts was enough for them to drop it. I'd forgotten about this until I read this thread. Like a lot of these stories, I've had more than my fair share of nice guys, TM, but this guy was definitely the worst. This guy messaged me on OkCupid. He was 62. Not necessarily a deal breaker, except I was 20 and he was a dozen years older than my parents. I said thanks but no thanks. I was uncomfortable with that much of an age difference. Good luck out there. He flipped. Non-stop messages vacillating between how I would regret this, wheedling, compliments and apologies, and call me a whore, a slut, a blue baller, etc. Literally dozens upon dozens of messages a day. He was a lawyer. He had ways of making me regret this. I would never do as good as him. No other man would treat me so well, and I'm a whore if I say no. On and on. This was many years ago. At the time, you could report someone for harassment on OkCupid, but it didn't stop that person from messaging you. Finally, I told him I would meet him in the city, at a popular college bookstore, at 2 p.m. Wouldn't you know it, I somehow forgot to go. After another day or two of berating for standing him up, he got the hint and disappeared. Edit. I definitely should have phrased that better. Older than me was not a deal breaker. But, especially when I was 20, one limited age difference to, in the same decade. This guy called me ageist a lot, as if it would change my mind. Now that I'm a 30-year-old spinster, LVE relaxed my ageist ways. But 62 would still be a deal breaker. I used to work at GameStop and the building was connected to a Starbucks. He recognized me from high school, but was a year under me, so I had no idea who he was. I generally kept to myself. He talked to me as I waited for my order, and he seemed pretty cool. A couple weeks later he tells me I'm pretty and if we could hang out. I'm engaged, so I told him outright. He promised me that he just wanted to be friends, and I'm apparently a very gullible person. He'd get me free Starbucks, tell me I'm a great artist, yada yada. About 2 weeks later he asks me to meet him at a bar because he's upset about something. Trying to be a good friend, I go to comfort him. So, I go to the bar, and he's already drunk. I didn't drink because if things turned sour, I could just leave. He gets all feely on my thigh. I tell him I'm uncomfortable, so he stops, apologizes that he's drunk. I kick his ass at pool and he asks me to go smoke with him. I don't smoke cigarettes, but sure. I'll go talk. He pushed me against the wall, kissed me, and put his hand in my pants. I fought him back, but a dude leaving the bar got him off of me. No nice guy will ever be trusted again. TLDR, He used my gullible nature against me and tried to rape me. Met up with a guy from collegeclub.com, and we had planned for a quick bite to eat. I had forgotten my wallet, so he came to my dorm room with me to quickly grab it. We get there and he immediately starts looking around at all my photos etc. around the room. He finds my Homer Simpson slippers and a rooster beanie Boo my nephew had left there. He takes the rooster and stuffs it in Homer's mouth and makes it move, as if the slipper was chewing, and says, "Look at me. I am vain. I create suffering for animals so I can feast. Selfish hungry bitch." I was speechless, but then he opens my drawer and starts throwing makeup around saying, "This is tested on animals, I am vain. Animals suffer for my beauty," and then opened my wardrobe and started throwing clothes around saying, "These things have been made in sweatshops." My friend called security on him. Edited to add, this was not our first date. More like 6th or 7th, and every other time the guy was a peach. He was considerate, a great listener, and made me laugh. All in all, a really, seemingly, genuine nice guy. He had never previously mentioned being vegan. We had went on coffee dates, and he ordered black nothing else. And this was to be our first time going to a restaurant together. Thankfully, we didn't, because it was for weekend brunch, and I would have got the bacon. He was a nice guy, but had his friends stalk me in an online MMO after I was late texting him back. He was also super passive-aggressive, like, "I see you online, but you aren't responding to MY messages." The straw that broke the camel's back was when he showed up at my college campus, which was an hour from where he lived, and wanted to randomly hang out. But he wasn't a creepy stalker, he was just a nice guy I didn't understand. Edit. A lot of people are talking about the stalking thing. He showed up less than a week after we met and talked on OK and text message. That to me is a huge red flag personally. I went on a first date with a guy, casual date for coffee. It wasn't terrible, but it was obvious that we didn't really click that well. He did the typical nice guy stuff during the date, where he talked about how he was different from other guys, knew how to treat a woman, some talking down on gym brothers etc. I ended the date pretty quickly, as I wasn't really feeling it, and had just gotten off of a midnight shift, so it was past my bedtime. He insisted on walking me to my car and opening the door for me. Fine, whatever. Then he hugged me, and when we went to break apart, he tried kissing me. I turned my face and he immediately got agitated, blocked me from entering my car and said, "What? No kiss." I'm a pretty easygoing and tolerant person, but that was the first time something like that had ever happened, and I immediately felt a slight bit of fear, as the guy was blocking my car and was about 6 feet 4 inches. So much larger than me. I immediately put on my super serious face and said, "No, sorry. I really need to be getting home now," and luckily he moved. Took a bit of a break from dating after that. Well, there have been many, but one in particular takes the cake. When I was a freshman in college, I met a guy through mutual friends that seemed to be really cool. I was really intrigued by his intellect and what I perceived to be kindness. Zero red flags from this guy. He seemed immensely compassionate due to the suffering he'd had to endure growing up. He had cancer, and had to get a testicle removed, and has also discovered his father hanging one day after his mom up and left, among other things. Anyways, I invited him over to my dorm on our first date, and before long we went from discussing literature to taking the danger highway to the bone zone. After sex, he says, "The first time I talked to you, which was over the internet mind you, dear readers, I decided I would tell you I loved you after the 4th date." Kind of chuckle to myself and brush it off, because this isn't the first time this kind of thing has been said to a girl after sex, right? Anyways, he then asks me if he's the best sex of my life, and if I'm ready to be exclusive. I say something to the effect of, "I think you're awesome, but I don't want to rush into things. Let's have a few more dates and see how this goes." He immediately gets up, puts his clothes on, tells me, "You're just like every other whore who doesn't want a man with one fucking testicle," and leaves. Never heard from him again. Kept trying to hug me. Like, every time he would see me. I'd never hug him back, yet he kept trying. I was a work-study then, and he'd go to where I worked just to see me. I'd be walking down the hallway with a professor, and they'd watch this guy 5x the size of me open his arms to hug me as I walked by him. IDK if it counts as nice guy, but it was really cringy. I had a date with a guy I met through OkCupid. When he found out that I was, at the time, writing erotica for a living, he put his hand very gently on mine and asked, with all the sincerity in the world, "Who hurt you?" "No one hurt me, guy. I got paid money to write stories about people dicking each other, and I had a whale of a time." He absolutely would not believe that I enjoyed my job, and that I wasn't lashing out, as a result of some obvious sexual trauma LD had in my past that he could somehow save me from. God only knows how actual sex workers cope on dates if that's a common approach to people who aren't terrified to openly discuss penises. There was no second date. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe to see more videos like this one.